There
Smart
you
lady
go.
face. Thank you, Sherry, and thank you everybody for joining us this evening. As she mentioned, I am a chiropractor, and for 30 years I've been, removing interference in the cervical spine to help relieve headaches. Interesting fact about headaches is God actually designed us to always have a headache 24/7. And we have nerves that come out of the first five vertebra in your neck that almost act like spark plug wires in your vehicle. And those five nerves on each side are inhibiting that headache from happening. So, if you've ever had a head trauma or a neck whiplash or neck injury, you would have lost some of that inhibition. And now all of a sudden, you start these patterns of headaches. So first, we need to make sure that all the connections are healed and working right in the neck before we then return the patterns of whatever was triggering these headaches back to normal. Now, since 9 years ago, when I've learned about ASEA, we have had just unbelievable results on how fast people find that homeostasis. And then just dawns on them that they haven't had a headache in X amount of weeks, months, or even years before they realize it. When people return back to normal and you don't have symptoms, sometimes you forget you had the symptoms. And I know that sounds weird, but when I was in pain, I had no idea what it would be like to feel no pain because it was for so many years, but then it's gone, and it's hard to remember how much pain I was in all the time. I mean, I obviously have memories of it, but you get so used to feeling normal. So, we're going to talk about the brain tonight and the things that trigger headaches, what types of headaches there are, and how we can help prevent that from ever happening just through natural things that we do. So, let me go ahead and share the screen and let's get started. So we are unraveling headaches. We're going to show you how to not just mask them like so many people do. And I get it. When your head's hurting, you can't departmentalize that pain down here somewhere like I can in the body. And so there's nowhere to hide when that pain is in your head, and it can be very debilitating. Now, before we get started and having this talk about different types of headaches and the root causes of them and how our body functions through the headache, I do want to remind you that we are talking tonight about a company called ASEA, and this is a supplement company. So, because it's a supplement company, we're not going to intend to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any diseases or actual medical conditions. Your body's the only thing that can heal you or cure you. Okay, medication can save our lives and it can, has a purpose for a time and a place, but inevitably, meds don't heal you, your body heals you. And so we're going to talk about that and that healing power that's within and how it actually works, because there's so much fascinating things going on in our bodies that we just take for granted and we don't even understand. And yet it keeps working and we're still here. So when we talk about headaches in general, globally, there are serious economic costs. Okay. And so this is just a reality. People don't work and they lose money that way. So we have a loss of productivity. We have healthcare expenses. People spend so much money on consultations, treatments, medications, hospitalizations because of headaches. We have disability payments that the government pays out for people with chronic headache sufferers. And so it takes a toll on our public health. And then, of course, just the impact on caregivers. A lot of times they need caregivers to take care of them. And so they're not able to work if it's a family member, or it just creates a whole bunch more stress in general. And then we have our quality of life, our social costs. Well, when people have chronic headaches, they tend to diminish your quality of life in a major way. Your personal relationships, recreational activities, and your basically daily routines are all thrown off. And this creates a huge mental health issue. Chronic pain can lead to anxiety and depression and other mental health problems, creating a lot of distress for individuals. And so when we talk about understanding headaches, well, there's different types of headaches. First, we're going to just talk briefly about a migraine headache. Now, this is what most people think of when they think of headaches, and this is a neurological condition that can cause very intense throbbing pain. It's usually one side of the head, but it's more than just the pain. When people get migraines, they describe them like it's this intense pulsing pain. Like I said, usually one side of the body, it can last, or one side of the head, it can last for hours or even days at times. And it often comes with nausea and sensitivity to light and sound. So other symptoms might be like visual disturbance. They see flashing lights or blind spots. They feel dizzy or weak, and even tingling and numbness in their face and hands. And they can even have trouble speaking. So the migraine happens in different phases. So we have four phases. It's called the prodome. And this is like when you're feeling changes, maybe a day or two before the migraine hits. Then you have the aura. Some people see auras around lights, and they'll notice their visual symptoms starting to happen. And then they get the attack. That's on the actual headache part. And then there's the post-dome, whereas after the pain ceases, they just feel very drained and tired for a day or so. So you can imagine how much this interferes with quality of life, with productivity, with having any type of life at all. So there's lots of things that can set off a migraine. Common triggers are things like stress, that's a big one. Certain different foods or drinks you might be sensitive to. Changing your sleep patterns, that can set these off. Hormonal changes. So as we age and hormones change, this could start triggering headaches. And even small, strong smells and bright lights can do that. So there's different ways that we deal with it. Pain relief medication, preventative medication, lifestyle changes to avoid those triggers that we talked about. And then there's natural remedies like relaxation techniques and certain supplements that will help. So the next thing I want to talk about is cluster headaches. So this is characteristics and patterns. So a cluster headache is a very severe, reoccurring headache. That's why they're called clusters, because they happen to come in groups or in cycles. And so they're going to be explained or told that they feel like extremely painful. Again, this is usually one side of the head as well, or behind the eye. It can be very intense and often described as burning or piercing pain. Other symptoms might also be like redness or tearing in your eye on the affected side, or even a droopy eyelid. So these headaches typically last between 15 minutes and 3 hours. But here's the tricky part. You might get several of these attacks in a single day because it's a cluster, okay? And it's coming into periods like that. So who gets them? Well, the cluster headaches usually come, they're relatively rare for most people, but it's more common in men than in women, and it starts in their 20s to 30s. Now, I think I forgot to mention that the migraines are more common in women than in men as well. And so they're not sure what really causes the cluster headaches, but they know that the hypothalamus is involved. Now, the hypothalamus is the part of your brain that controls your body's clock. Okay, and that's why it's often the same time each day or the same time each year you go through a little season of having these types of headaches or these patterns. And you have many different types of headaches that we're not going to talk about tonight, like a sinus headache or exertion, by working out too hard, creating headaches and such like that. So when we talk about common triggers, we briefly mentioned this: light, sound, strong smells can do that. Certain foods like alcohol, caffeine, and different junk foods, or colored dyes is also another big thing from the food. Stress and emotions plays a huge role. You can go from happy to freaked out and headaches starting in just seconds from stressful events. Of course, hormone changes, we mentioned all of that too. So here's how we understand this headache process, okay? And so first we're going to talk about how they occur at a cellular level. Then we're going to talk about the neuronal excitability and pain pathways, and then the vascular changes that happen. So think of your body like it's a big city, and all your cells are the tiny houses and buildings in that city. And so here's what happens when a headache starts. First, an alarm goes off, and it's basically sending the ouch signal to the body or to the brain because of stress, lack of sleep, or maybe something you ate. And then what happens is chemical messengers are released. Now, these are redox signaling molecules, and these ouch signals actually are tiny chemicals that these cells release. And these are like messengers that say, hey, there's something not right here. It's the first line of defense that says, hey, I need help. We're out of balance. And we're going to talk about the different types of out of balance here in a minute. And so what happens is inflammation will kick in. And then the swelling of the streets of your building happens. So now there's a lot more traffic and things are getting clogged up. And this is because the blood vessels are getting wider, so more blood can actually come in. Now, when those blood vessels get wider, it creates pressure on the nerves outside the blood vessels, and that makes them more sensitive. So now it's kind of like when you bump your arm and then you touch it against things, and it's more sensitive than other parts of your body that you're touching. That's what happens to the nerve endings. So because of that, the brain starts to get super excited and the cells start getting all fired up. It's like they're sending messages back and forth real fast, like they're playing that game hot potato. And then the pain feeling kicks in. So all this excitement and those ouch signals finally end up in the part of the body that says, this is pain. And that's when you actually feel your headache. And so it creates this snowball effect, and the whole process feeds into itself. So you're creating chemical messengers that cause inflammation, that cause pain, which releases more chemical messengers that cause more inflammation, that causes more pain. And it's this vicious loop that you get stuck in. So when we talk about the neuronal excitability, think of your brain cells as messengers in your brain. And during a headache, these messengers get a little too excited. It's like they've had too much coffee and they start sending way more messages than usual. Okay, this is called increased neuronal excitability. When the neurons get overexcited, they become more sensitive. And so now things that normally don't bother you, like loud music or lights, now all of a sudden it's very intense and it will actually make your headache worse. So your pain pathways in your brain. So let's just talk about pain pathways for a second. They're like the roads that the pain signals travel on through your body and back to your brain. So during a headache, here's what's happening. We have a starting point. So the pain often starts with a blood vessel or a muscle in your head somewhere. And then the first step is it finds the trigeminal nerve. This is cranial nerve 5. It's a big nerve that controls your face and your whole head for any pain. There's actually a condition called trigeminal neuralgia that's the most painful condition in the body, and more people take their lives because of it. And it's when that nerve is overexcited all the time. Okay, and so it can be very, very painful. But the trigeminal nerve, it's going to start the pain signal on its journey. It hears it and then it sends it. The first step along the way is the relay station, which is your brainstem. So that's like the relay station that decides, like the switchboard operator, thinking, where do I send this pain signal? Where does the signal go next? And then it makes its final destination, the cortex. The cortex is the outer shell of your brain that you basically experience your life. All your thoughts, your pain, your emotions, the way you feel, your temperature, everything is felt through our cortex. So when the final destination gets there, your brain is like, ouch, I have a headache. Now you actually feel the pain. So there's a process in which how your brain is sending those pain signals. But here's the interesting part. As those pain signals travel, they cause more inflammation and make more neurons excited along the way. So it's like that snowball effect again. We're trapped in that loop where the chemicals are causing the inflammation, which causes the pain, which releases more chemicals that cause more inflammation and more pain. So then we get the last part of this is just talking about the vascular changes that are happening. So we have so many vessels in our brain. 20% more blood flow in your brain, or 20% of our blood is actually in our brain, even though it's only 2% of our body. So the first thing that happens during a headache is the blood vessels dilate. We've already said that. It brings more blood into that area. And the reason is because this part of the brain, basically it's called vasodilation. And when it increases that blood vessels, um, I'm sorry, when it increases the blood vessels because of that dilation, it's obviously bringing more blood to the brain, which causes the throbbing feeling that you're feeling. And so then the inflammation irritates the nearby nerves, causing more pain that you're feeling. Then we have changes in the chemicals of your brain. So during a headache, especially a migraine, these chemicals are like your serotonin and dopamine, and these change how the blood flow behaves. And so our chemicals are dictating whether we're going to keep dilating or constrict or so forth. Then we have the blood-brain barrier, which is lined with redox signaling molecules to be the intelligence of that barrier that don't let anything into the central nervous system if they can stop it. Now, during a headache, when everything expands, that barrier becomes more permeable. So now things that usually wouldn't get into the brain, like maybe an infection or some heavy metals, they can find their way in during that time. And then it creates this cortical spreading depression. And with a migraine, that's the aura. And there's a wave of change that moves across the brain. And this affects the blood flow as it actually spreads. So when we understand the role of inflammation and oxidation in the brain and how inflammation is contributing to pain, and now oxidative stress on the cellular function, this is what ties it all together to our whole redox complex. So in order to talk about oxidative stress for a moment, we really need to mention where it comes from. Now, most people think of like toxins and free radicals and oxidative stress as like pollution from outside, like dirty air, dirty water, not clean food, things that we're touching that are making it into our body. And that's true, that's part of it. But the majority of it, our body makes ourselves. So every cell in your body is taking oxygen and sugar and converting it into energy. And in making that energy, it's like having a little V8 engine in your mitochondria, those little jelly bean things inside every cell of your body. And so this is metabolic waste. It's the waste of making energy. There's a byproduct, and our body needs to neutralize that. So out of these same mitochondria that are making these engines and making all that energy, they're also spitting out redox molecules to neutralize, let's just say, the exhaust. Okay. And so that's that delicate balance between redox signaling and oxidative stress. We're making it to neutralize the same stress that we're creating. But if our mitochondria aren't functioning well, then we're not able to keep up with that. Now, how many mitochondria we have in each cell really determines the level of oxidative stress that's present. So your gut cells, we have like three little engines per cell. So we can replace these cells every few hours, every few days, very easy. Most of the other body cells, 2 to 300 mitochondria, we have some specialized ones, like our heart cells that have 8,000. So this is like a garage with 8,000 cars in it, and they're all on at the same time. You can imagine how much pollution is happening inside that garage versus if there was only three. Same size garage, right? Now, the brain cells, oh, they're the most impressive. Our brain and our nerve cells have 2.5 million mitochondria per cell. So if you're paying attention, that means that they're 2.5 million times more important than any other part of your body. And they also put off 2.5 million times more metabolic waste than any other part of your body. So that's why it needs so much of our blood and so much of our redox chemistry that our body's making in order to neutralize that exact stress. So what are these redox signaling molecules? Well, they're made from the mitochondria in our cell, like I mentioned, and they're tiny molecules that are easily absorbed and used inside the cell and outside our cell and all the other fluids and all the tissues of our body. Every cell in your body is making these because they don't need an invitation into a cell. They can just go right through the wall very easily. And they turn on and off switches. So they're activating your DNA, they're activating your genes, they're turning on and off antioxidants and every pathway for any function the cell would have. They're the operators controlling the actual switchboard. That creates a cascading effect to all the cells nearby so they can all adapt. This is how we stay alive when something comes in and threatens our lives or an infection or what have you. Our body learns to adapt, to deal with the stress, to neutralize it, to clean the cell or kill the cell and make a new one, however that works. And so tiny molecules easily absorb, turn on and off switches, create a cascading effect to build resilience. Now, here's the thing. When we were young, we produced so much of this redox energy that literally every cell in our body could communicate with each other. And then when we age and we start to age, we don't make as much. We lose 1% per year. So, whoever old you are, that's how much percent of redox that your body can't make anymore. Well, when we used to be able to talk to every cell in nearby, and then we start aging or have different health issues that steal the redox from us, we have to conserve where we're actually communicating. And wherever there's lack of communication, there's no function going on there. So it's important that we restore that communication. But we're going to continue to age and we're going to continue to lose more and more of these connections. And that makes our cells not as strong anymore. We're not as resilient. If we can't communicate to everybody, we all don't know what's going on, and things are happening without us being able to understand it. And so the good news is that we found ways to rebuild redox in your body and restore these connections. So no matter how old you are, you can start reversing that age right now. This is like the fountain of youth when you find the things that your own cells are making to prevent any stress in your body and in your cells. So how redox affects our overall well-being. Well, the impact it has on every body system in the body. Now, at the beginning of this year, we went through a 12-week course on all 11 systems in our body, and each one of them, how redox impacts that. So if you're interested in diving in deep more to any of the body systems, we already have those episodes in the showcase for you. So the connection between redox balance and any health issue in the body, it always goes back to if it's a cell, then this will help the cell. No matter what type of cell you have in your body, it's the energy that your body's making for that cell. So we can make more. Not only does that energy have more power, but it also has better ability to communicate. So the link between free radicals and headache onset, the free radicals are going to cause oxidative stress. And if we can't deal with the oxidative stress and neutralize it, this is what redox means. I'm donating an electron to bind to a free electron that doesn't have its partner. As soon as I do that, now it's no longer a threat. And so we have antioxidants like a sheriff with a whole belt full of redox molecules, positive, negative, whatever you need to neutralize, I got it. And they're going to neutralize those free radicals. But if we can't do that, if we don't have the ability to stop the stress, it's going to turn off that switch for antioxidants to do their job, and it turns on the inflammation switch. Now, this is when your headaches and everything else is going to start. So inflammation doesn't just happen. It happens because of too much oxidative stress. Now, that can happen for many reasons. Now, one of the biggest reasons is your mitochondria is not functioning anymore. So you're not able to keep up with making the redox to neutralize the metabolic stress or the oxidative stress that are in your cells. And so it's twofold there. When we deal with this scale right here, this is basically showing us that every cell in your body can only have two kinds of stress. If you weigh it to the left, that's like rusting, okay? That's oxidizing. 75 to 80% of all conditions are oxidative stress, okay? When that can't be dealt with, it flips over into the reactive type of stress where I'm trying to react to what's going on, and that's called inflammation. Now, if it's just for an hour or two while I'm healing a cut or a boo-boo, then great, that did its job. That's what we were supposed to do. But when it stays on all the time and you're never able to put the fire out, well, now that's an autoimmune, that's skin issues, that's irregular angry cells, that's breathing issues, hormone imbalances. All of this comes from too much inflammation from the other side. So when we think of balanced, okay, redox connection to headaches is the link between the signaling and the migraine triggers. So when we have, oh, sorry, I went too fast. When we have proper, let me go back. Um, the redox imbalance is going to sensitize individuals that to common migraine triggers. And so the things that used to trigger you, when you have more redox resilience, it's going to desensitize you to that. Those usual triggers are just not going to, they're not going to push you over the edge and create all the excitability that they once used to. Then we have oxidative stress with cortical spreading depression. We're going to talk about this as CSD. So this is like migraines, okay? When it just starts spreading through the body, it can be a lot of different types of headaches, but that cortical spreading depression, it's a wave of electrophysiological hyperactivity for a prolonged period of time that creates neural inhibition. Okay, this is primarily associated with migraine auras and other neurological conditions. So oxidative stress plays a very significant role in the mechanisms underlying this. So the first is oxygen metabolism. So during this CSD, there is an increased metabolic demand for oxygen and glucose. Okay, your body needs more of this to be able to put out the fire. An imbalance of that will accumulate too many free radicals in your body and contributes to oxidative stress. Then we have neuronal injury is another cause. This will elevate the levels of these oxidation, and it's going to damage the neuronal membranes. That's the membranes around our nerves. Their proteins, the DNA, it leads to dysfunction and even death of the cell. And this can perpetuate the cycle of this chronic spreading. The inflammation, oxidative stress can actively inflame the pathways, resulting in a relapse or a pro-inflammatory cytokines. These are neuroinflammation that further propagate this whole cortical spreading depression. Ion homeostasis, this is involving the concentration of ions like potassium and calcium, negatively and positively charged ions that are in the inside and outside of all the cells of our body that are responsible for opening and closing the door accordingly when we want to let something in or push something out. Think of it like when you're going to the grocery store and you walk up to the door and the glass is just, the door's open, you walk in and they close right behind you. When we have the right ion balance, our doors are functioning great and we can bring the calcium in, the potassium in, and the calcium out. We can do all of these things. But without that homeostasis, these don't work properly. You're standing there, you're knocking on the door, it's not opening. I got all this sugar here for you, but you said you wanted it. I got a delivery notice from you. Why aren't you letting me in? When cells don't have redox, they don't function well. They can't keep these balances. And then, of course, the worst is the mitochondrial dysfunction. If our batteries in the cell are not producing energy, enough energy, it's going to lead all sorts of imbalances to set the stage for the perfect headache. Okay, and so all of that adds up and contributes to why we have oxidative stress and why we can't get rid of it when we try to do the right things. But we don't really think of it like redox signaling. We've taken for granted that your body's made trillions of these every second since the day you were born. In fact, you wouldn't live for 3 minutes without them if you stopped making them altogether. So when we talk about the imbalance that the signaling might help prevent a headache, well, the potential of redox molecules, they're stabilizing these neural functions. And so when our body is sending information through the nervous system, through our vascular system, through our lymphatic system, it's important that we have enough potential to get that all the way there. Potential like charge on your cell phone. I better have enough potential to talk for 15 minutes and not kill my battery. Okay, so improving our cellular energy is the other thing that the redox does. So it's not just communication and sending information, it's actually charging our cells. So it doesn't matter what type of headache you have or what type of condition you even have in your body. The only difference between somebody that doesn't have them and somebody that does is how much potential are the cells holding. If you're doing things that are constantly toxifying your brain, you're not able to keep up with the pollution. If you're doing things that are constantly toxifying and stressing your body, and we're aging as well, we can't keep up with that potential. So if you have potential, like which one of these do you think worked better? Which one do you think is going to have more power to defend itself or to function, to keep the lights on? All of these things matter when it comes to the function of our cells. Now, here's the bad part is depending on how old you are, you might not have a full battery on your best day because we don't have what we made when we were 20 years old anymore. We just don't have the mitochondria. And there's never been anybody that figured out a supplement until now on how this can be beneficial and how this can actually help us. So, potential headache solutions, well, with the tension headaches, reducing muscle tension is what redox is going to do. It's going to improve cellular function. For the migraines, it addresses the underlying oxidative stress that inevitably triggers the inflammation, which starts this whole process to begin with. And then your cluster headaches, it's going to change the potential and the cells of the hypothalamus, the one that's regulating your clock. Okay. And so all three of those different types of headaches have different mechanisms of action of how they happen, but it's the same um, chemical reaction or the same molecules that your body's making to neutralize them. It's just doing it through different tissues. That's all it's doing. So when we talk about, well, how do we optimize our redox? Like, what is it that I can do? Well, there's lifestyle things like when you exercise, you're going to make more. You're making endorphins for the brain and you're making all sorts of extra redox. Stress management techniques. You can have road rage on your way home, and by the time you get home, you're done. You're not even having anything left for healing tonight, or even getting a good quality sleep for that matter. Sleep is super important. We don't make up for lost sleep. Sleep is when your body repairs and makes 75% of the new cells that it's going to do in a day. It does it during 1 to 3 hours of deep and REM sleep. And so that is super important that we have just basic things. Okay, these are basic. They don't cost you anything. Antioxidant rich foods. So these are foods that actually grew from the ground and things that ran on the ground, not stuff that's been processed 1,000 times and it's just empty calories. Hydration. I could do a whole talk just on hydration and how we're 70% water. Our blood needs hydration to move things through the blood. Our lymphatic needs water to move things through the lymph nodes. Our digestive tract needs water to get everything broken down and assimilated back into our system. So the number one nutritional deficiency in the entire world is water. And make sure you're drinking filtered water. Otherwise, your kidneys and your body actually becomes the filter. Then there's specific nutrients that can really help support your body making redox signaling, like antioxidants and omega essential fatty acids. These are super important for your brain to be able to have the resources that it needs to be able to rebuild. And now we have, for the first time ever, the only redox signaling supplement. Now, this is exciting because it's physiologically impossible to have these active molecules not neutralizing each other in the bottle, but they figured out how to do it. And so supplementing with these molecules over time, being super consistent, will slowly raise the tide of how much redox is in every cell of your body. And it won't be something that if you missed a day, it just drops off and you don't have it, and then you put it back in the next day. It takes a while to get your whole body back to the resources that you had when you were in your 20s. And if you stopped it, it would take a while to get back to where you're at before you started. But that's not the point. The point is we figured out a way to hack the body and to give it something that it's making for itself in order to do every function in every cell. That's astonishing. I mean, that truly is the center of wellness. Everything else will happen around cellular health. And we have the best supplement for cellular health on the planet. Increasing your redox chemistry increases the potential. The potential is the strength of the cell. the power that it has to stay charged and to function and to communicate. Those are all things that redox does for you. And then, of course, it's improving your body's ability to maintain homeostasis. Number one goal for life is to maintain your vital signs. If your blood pressure, if your heart rate, if your breath rate, if the pH in your blood is just off a tenth, you can't carry oxygen. That's a problem. You don't live very long. And so we use redox chemistry to balance every one of those vital signs. And that's number one job. After that, if there's anything left over and I was, had a good lifestyle that I added more to myself than I was wasting, then I can actually get something healed. Now, when your body's healing you, it's creating either a new cell, and in doing that, or it's going to clean up a cell. In making a new cell, it's literally going to make 3 billion copies of your DNA if you have enough redox. And then it'll rummage through them to find the cleanest one you have in there. You might not have seen a cell this good since 1982, but that's okay because the DNA is still in there to your original DNA before your illness, before your trauma, before this sickness, before whatever health challenge you've had. Your DNA has record of all those ones that came before. You just need enough potential to access those records and then to be able to come out with a better cell. And so this is designed to truly bring out the best inner you that you have. So what ASEA is, it's these amazing molecules that are coming out of every cell of your body that are allowing your body to use these as the letters of the language of communication that our body uses from cell to cell. It's all potential. And these molecules are the same ones that your body's making, so it's impossible for them not to work for you. They're going to help neutralize so much oxidative stress in your brain that it will radically change the way you function for the better, of course. Now, as I mentioned, being a chiropractor, so that's what ASEA is, and you're never going to see this anywhere. They have 7 patents on it, over 1,000 intellectual trade secrets on how they were able to stabilize these molecules. So, as I was mentioning, being a chiropractor, and I specialize in brain and spinal trauma, I've been doing brain therapies for decades. And when we do neurofeedback training, it's like going to the gym with your brain. It's literally physically growing new tissue in your brain, and it's exhausting. And we already mentioned that you have 2.5 million engines in every one of those cells. And so when you're working out brain activities, you build up that oxidative stress pretty quickly. And in this type of therapy, usually it's within 30 minutes, you're going to all of a sudden feel inflammation kick in. Your brain starts to get hot, it starts to feel pressure, and then a headache comes. And so we have to monitor patients closely to not let them shift into the inflammation side. We don't want them to have a headache, but we want them to get as much exercise for their brain as they can. We are limited to about 30 minutes twice a week. And the whole world is using that protocol still because they say the brain can't handle more stress than that without sending people off into headache land. Well, since we did ASEA, we've noticed that we can give a couple ounces in the morning, a couple ounces right before therapy, and they can actually go for up to 4 hours. Never hit inflammation, never hit a wall, never get a headache. And we literally have people around the globe doing that 30 days a month in a row. Now, that's like running an Ironman back to back to back every day for a month. No human could ever do that. Well, this allows your brain to do the equivalent and just keep going and going because we rub a gel on our neck and we drink the product, and that rubbing the gel is twice as concentrated as the liquid. And that gets right through the blood-brain barrier in seconds and immediately starts neutralizing all that oxidative stress. So if somebody's having a headache, we'd immediately put it here, put it on the back of the brainstem, put it in and around the ears, all the reflex points there, even the hands and the bottom of the feet. And it'll start to neutralize any of that stress very, very quickly. Now, as you build that resilience up, you're never going to even notice headaches. We have plenty of people over the years, hundreds of people that used to get headaches, and Never really knew why. I will tell you, you do not get a headache because you have a lack of aspirin in your body. That's a fact. Now, the aspirin could actually help you feel better, but that's not the cause. And so we have to get to the root cause, and it's always oxidative stress. And so we think of things like smoking cigarettes. That's the most oxidative stress thing you could ever do for your brain. Just so you know, you need way more ASEA to neutralize that habit. But as you start to have the balance, then you don't start to have the addictions. The addictions come because there's an imbalance in that substance helped neutralize the feelings, right? So when we actually restore the potential of every cell, we adapt and your body's super resilient. And it wants more than anything just to function to the best of your ability. And when we're not doing that and we're not using our potential, well, that's when we start to have other health issues come in because we weren't paying attention and we weren't being consistent with our lifestyle. Now, I'm all for going and having fun and challenge your system every now and then. Okay. It's good to challenge your system and to be perfect and never have any fun, it's not going to live a long, healthy life. But the thing is you need to always be consistent at least 80% of the time. 20% of the time, your body can handle what you throw at it. And if you have good resilience and a lot of potential, you just neutralize it right on the spot, no problem. But if you're only doing the right thing 20% of the time, you're never going to make a huge change in your body. You're just getting by and you're just surviving. Well, we all know that these last 4 years have been a crazy time on our planet. So many people that are just dropping dead, unfortunately. And never even had a symptom. Okay. And so there's so many things that we need to do to make sure that that doesn't happen to us and to our loved ones. And the number one most important thing is immunity. And the biggest way to change your immunity is also with this ASEA product. It'll increase glutathione, which is your number one antioxidant, by 800% with one serving. And so I urge you, if this is new to you, get back with the person that brought you here and have them turn you in on to our showcase where we've done this talk for 2.5 years now. There's over 100 episodes in there of all different topics about how the body heals itself and how redox plays a massive role in that. I've been 9 years in this, and every week when I do the research for each call, I'm still so blown away at how all this works. We're calling it redox chemistry. For my whole career, we called it innate intelligence. It's the intelligence from within that knows what to do. You have 65 quadrillion chemical reactions taking place in your body every second, in the dark, even. And we think we're better chemists than that. Just give your body what it's already making and what it already knows how to do with it. It doesn't have to digest this and assimilate it. It's going straight into your bloodstream and straight to, like, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be in the brain. Didn't you get your memo yesterday? Get up to the brain right now. It doesn't have to say, what are you? It's, why are you here? I need you over there and there. So your body has its own list of neurological importance, the things that are most important for you neurologically that it needs help healing. And it might not be your symptom for why you want to take this, but it's definitely more important than that symptom. Now, it's just a matter of time and a matter of how much you're taking. That can be really important too. So make sure you're working with the person that turned you on to this to know the best dose or amount that would be best for you. And that might change over the years. When I've had injuries or illnesses, I've had to take a lot more during that time to help me get through it, and less time, less when I'm feeling really good and feeling really balanced. So you've started a journey now by educating yourself on what these molecules are. Now it's up to you to do something about that so they can actually do something for you. Just knowing about it isn't going to be enough. You have to actually consume them and put them on your body for them to actually work. So that's it for tonight. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry that was a little longer call than usual, but there's just so much information on why and how we get headaches and how we're going to neutralize them and how we can never have them again, ideally. So I'll pass it back to you, Sherry.